Hey, good evening, good evening, good evening. Another Tuesday night. Welcome, welcome, welcome to everyone, both near and far. Just waiting for my sound engineer to do her thing. I'm sure she'll be there in a moment. But all is well, my end. Uh, could be a lot worse, but I'm grateful for how things are. So we will be continuing our subject matter of moral injury. And tonight we're looking at transforming inner pain. So if you're live or watching on catch up, either a few days, a few weeks, or you might catch this later on at some time, I hope you find what I share for the next 20-25 minutes is helpful, and yeah, just helpful for you and however you might want to use it. So just waiting for my person to do what she needs to do. I've not seen her yet. And the last time I asked her to do something, she was doing it, and then she got a dinner. So dinner takes preference, of course. But anyway, I'm going to start in a few moments, whether anybody's there or not. I'm just going to take trust that people. Good evening. That's all I want to know. One person, and I'm good to go. Right. So thank you. Good evening, Sonia, and anyone who's local or not local. I don't want to be kind of saying where people are from, but certainly not just local in the UK. So I want to talk about today transforming your inner pain caused by moral injury, but can be caused by other things as well. Certainly, the whole thing around abuse in the workplace is not to be taken lightly. Well, most schools don't take bullying lightly in the playground. And certainly in my years of working with students who have been bullied at school, and there's been a trail of bullying from home, primary school, senior school, one of the first things I ask them at university, are you being bullied at university? And if the answer is no, that's good, because if it is, it needs to be reported, because the problem then is people then get into cycles and involved in abusive relationships and so forth, and go to workplace and they're abused at work and whatever. So we're looking at how to transform inner pain. Those of you who know that I do write an article, try to get it out. I'm trying to sort out the days, which is the best day. So I just need to kind of get into a routine. And I'm talking today about embracing pain. Sean Grover, I'll be quoting him a little bit later on. He talks about when we embrace pain, lean into it, we honor it, and we begin to heal. So this whole thing around pain, inner pain, is really important. How we can shift it. And one of the words I've been wanting to use over the last few weeks is discombobulation. And for those who from different parts of the world, they might be thinking, what on earth is that? Basically, it's a fun or fancy word for confusion, chaos, all that type of stuff. So my name is Richard Rohr. I'm a trained psychotherapist and a lecturer and trainer. And I've been doing this now for 4 years, and it's kind of gaining traction, which is good, which I really want. So talking about emotional pain, psychological pain, really important. The pain of mistrust, the pain of betrayal, all a part of moral injury. And in the article I've written, it's on LinkedIn, you'll find access to other stuff I've written, but also to other links as well. So at the moment, as I said before, very little has been, in terms of effective treatment, possibly the best treatment at the moment is by the Australian Defence Force, who have developed this pastoral narrative disclosure to deal with moral injury. It's chaplains and psychologists work together. So for those of you who may be watching for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. Really appreciate you taking the time just to listen in for 20 minutes or so. I just want to give you some definitions. Let me just see. I'll just put some down here, and then at least you can have an idea what I'm talking about when it comes to, at least you can see it as well. There's one. I'll perhaps put in 2 or 3. Here we go. And there's one thing about leadership that, Jonathan Shea, the person who spoke about it, emphasizes leadership where people experience moral injury. Oh, okay, yeah. I don't know who that is, but anyway. Yeah, thank you, sound engineer. Yeah, so Jonathan Shea, the psychiatrist who formulated the idea of moral injury, he talks about leadership failure and a betrayal of what's right by a person who hold legitimate authority and in high stakes. So leadership is really critical. And quite often when moral injury takes place in the workforce, it's because the leadership hasn't been strong enough, or they've seen what's happened and they've turned a blind eye. And it's easier to dispose of an individual than it is to change a structure. So they get rid of individual, pay a bit of money, get them to sign an NDA. And I'm going to do a session on that because I think how NDAs are being used is abusive. I think it's abhorrent and it shouldn't be so. And I really want to encourage people, before you sign the NDA, if you're able to step back and do whatever you need to do. But that's another separate session. I just realized that so many people haven't signed NDAs, and that's a non-disclosure agreements, which really silences them, and the structure that really crucified them continues to mess about with people and so forth. So like most injuries, when we are hurt, there's a plaster, there's a plaster of Paris, there's something we can take, there's a tablet. And I started to think about this because moral injury over in the UK is a relatively new phenomenon. But when our value base has been destroyed or disrupted or dislodged significantly, we can't see it. And I started to think about when we have broken bones or disease, we go to the hospital, we get an X-ray or a CT scan, computer, tomography, where it takes rapid pictures of the internal organs, and then got the MRI that uses a strong magnetic force, so they're able to see what's happening on the inside of the body. If an organ is diseased, or there's lumps, or there's tumors, we can see it. But where moral injury is concerned, you can't see it. It's invisible. And talking to a friend of mine who I've shared over the past many weeks, one of the things that we've concluded, that moral injury is invisible. You can't see it with the eye, but people have been injured by what's taken place. And James, let me just share that, James. Thank you. Let me just share that. The likes of NDA are most on the rise at times of increase in employment. Now then, now listen. One of the things I'll say about me, on terms of these sessions, I do my stuff. However, if somebody brings another perspective, another insight, nuanced view, or some new information, listen, I'm all ears. So James, if you want to say a bit more, please, in the chat box, please do. If it's a conversation on LinkedIn between you and I want to know more about that, because I have a particular view. I hear it's been used, but obviously you've come in with something slightly different. But I really want to know your thoughts around that's really helpful. So that's helpful. So this whole thing around X-rays, CT scans, MRI scans, we've got it down pat, haven't we? And if somebody's got a blood disease, we can do blood tests. You stick it on the microscope, we can see what's happening. But with moral injury, it's an invisible injury, and we can't see it. And the victim, and not unless they're really kind of taken up with anxiety or depression, they look ordinary. And not until they tell their story do you know they've gone through a real kind of difficult time. So sad to say, no pharmaceutical company has got a drug who can deal with moral injury. All it might do is deal with some of the pain. If there's headaches and people's emotions might be high, they may be able to settle them, but they can't deal with the root of the problem. So the quote I'd like to use is by Richard Rohr, a Jesuit priest, and he says this from the world of counseling, and he's not a counselor or psychotherapist, but he says something which is absolutely profound. If we do not transform our pain, we will transmit it. And this is what else he says. Someone else always suffers because we do not know how to suffer our own wounds. Someone else always suffers when we do not know how to suffer our own wounds. And he says this, I think it's really profound. So he made this comment about when so we're wounded, and instead of dealing with it, we transmit it to our loved ones, our spouses. But he said the most vulnerable who are affected by it is our children. But he says something also deeply profound. We shouldn't try to get rid of our own pain until we've learned what it has to teach. So pain, moral injury as something to teach us. And when we're rushing off to the next thing, we're missing a learning moment about ourselves, about who we are. And for me, this is not about self-development now. This is something else I want to share in a little moment. So, am I saying the thing that James Richard Rohr says, is it easy? Well, no way it's not. Because we've become accustomed in this world that when we feel anything, we get rid of it as quickly as possible. And the thought of learning from pain doesn't even enter our consciousness. We want to dismiss it. We want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. But he says, don't be quick to get rid of it until you learn what it has to teach us. So one of the things, as I kind of pondered on this subject in terms of transforming your inner pain, some of you who've been with me from word go, I tried to, okay, let's have a look. James, transferring our pains are like children who are impacted by, yes, absolutely. Transferring our pains are like children who are impacted by parent anxiety. Absolutely. I think I might have shared a few weeks ago, we had a house fire years ago. I don't really need to get to how it happened. It wasn't anybody's fault. Possibly a tumble dryer that we left on, and I think it was a design fault, but we didn't know at the time. Fortunate for the family, I was up very late that night, and I promised to myself to go to bed early. I didn't. Went into the kitchen. Kitchen was full of smoke, and that's stupidly what I did. I went to open the window, went upstairs and spoke to my wife and said, I think we've got some problems downstairs. By the time I came back downstairs, there was flames awash in our kitchen. Anyway, cut a long story short, we had to move out of the house for quite a few months. And my daughters, I think were about 9, 10 maybe. And I remember driving somewhere, and I said to Saffron and Jordan, I said, how come you're not anxious or scared? And Jordan said, well, you're not. And I think sometimes when kids are anxious, they're picking up some of the anxiety from the parents. And I think James has really kind of spoken about it really, really well. That if we, and kids, and we're not expected to be perfect, but if we are anxious and we flap and we don't have control of things, that's how our children will be. I recall many years ago working with a student, and long time ago now, I can't remember names, doesn't matter, who had attempted to take her own life more than once. And she came for counselling, and the mother asked if she could stop in the session. I said, in fact, when I remember now, perhaps I was a little bit abrupt. I said, I'd rather you didn't. And perhaps now I say something a bit different, because I'd had an incident where a mother stayed in it. It wasn't good. So we get into this conversation, and then I couldn't understand what was happening to this young woman, why she was taking her own life, or attempting to take her own life. And then I asked her something. I asked her one question. I said, what happens when there's an argument in your home with mum and dad? So what happens? She said, well, you mean argument out? Oh, so I said, no, what happens when there's an argument? She said, well, one goes in one room and one goes in the other. So I said, well, who brings them back together? And she said, well, I do. I said, no, a young teenager should not be bringing parents back together in a family. The parents should be modeling good practice. And so then I said to her, I said, do you think your mother would enjoy being in this session? She said, no. I said, where are you going to learn to deal with conflict and difficulties if you're having to sort out the issues with your parents? And she just came for the one session. She had planned to come back, but then I don't know what happened. But it seems to me that's all she needed, just that push in the right direction. That bringing your parents back together after an argument is not the job of children. It's the two adults together getting it sorted and modeling good practice with the children. Anyway, I didn't mean to sell that, but I think it's really important. Thank you very much for that, to James. That's really, really helpful. And it's these interactions that really helps. I just find it fascinating, and it really helps to kind of, as show, as somebody calls it, to move forward. So, in the article that I've written, I've given you some links and so forth. Absolutely brilliant. If you can go and watch them. So this whole thing about nuance and different ways of viewing things and all the rest of it, really, really important. Now, this whole thing around transforming your inner pain, I want to make the distinction. This is not about self-development or self-growth. It's about self-discovery. Let me just say what the difference is. Self-growth, now that can be a lead on. Self-growth, self-development is acquiring new skills and knowledge. Self-discovery is learning who you are, your values, your traits, your characters, what you believe, and your opinions and so forth. When you get an understanding of who you are, then you know the skills and the knowledge you need to do self-development. And in a four kind of part model of personal development, you've got first self-discovery, number two is personal development, then self-mastery, then self-actualization. And what happens, we normally start at number two, acquiring skills and knowledge, and that's as far as it goes. Quite often we don't get to self-mastery because we're just acquiring skills, and then self-actualization we never fully complete. That is about getting to the place where you recognize your full potential. Many times we don't get there because we're still kind of acquiring skills, but the first part of the journey is self-discovery, and transforming your inner pain is about discovering who you are. There's an excellent article written by a woman called Bex Thompson. It's in the public domain. If you've gone onto my last article, pictures on the front, written a book. I love the title called Chasing Normal, because when we've had moral injury, what we want to go back to normal, and we can never go back to normal because what we've experienced is just too disruptive. We'll find a new normal, but we can't go back to how life was. Because what's happened to us has just been too disruptive. Also, maybe destructive, depends on what's happened to you. So go on LinkedIn. You'll find she's done an excellent account of how she survived abuse and early childhood trauma through counseling, journaling, doing different courses. It's not been a one size fits all. And one of the things I wanted to say is this, that I shared you a link with Dr. K, Healthy Gamer, and he's been interviewed. And one of the difficulties is that models quite often appeal to the individual, and appeal to the masses. But we're all individuals. One of the things about giving options, so somebody asked me for advice, and as counselors, we don't give advice, we make suggestions or options. But I've said to individuals, look, I can give you some options. Let's have a discussion about this. But it could be I give 6 or 7 options and we look at the pros and cons. But then in the conversation, something might pop up which is really suited for you. So one has to be really careful that I suggest, what I might suggest on these sessions are just hints and tips. It's no substitute for going to see a doctor or therapist or a counselor or a psychologist. But just to bear in mind that whatever I suggest on these programs are just hints and tips and suggestions. And what you could do, you could try something, and then it doesn't quite work for you, tweak it. Try it again with a new tweak. Try it again. If that works a bit better, okay, step back, tweak it again, make it yours. That's one of the things about models. Models don't fit everyone and everything. Models were okay in the place in which it was created, but once it moves out of that context, you have to continually keep tweaking it until it matches what's suited for you. So how then do we begin to transform our inner pain? Now, it's interesting. I looked at the word in terms of the article that I kind of use as a kind of foundation. And, there's nothing new under the sun. So, as you know, I'll perhaps have an article and then I'll use some of the ideas. Or I'll always name the individual, but then I develop some of the ideas. So Sean Grover has written this article, Transforming Pain into Something Beautiful. I've left the link in my article for those who want it. So it says, face your pain. I thought, no, there's another word. So sometimes we use the word confront, and I want to say something about that, but I use the word embrace. Now, the word confront in Western thinking has a negative connotation, but the word confront means to turn and face. That's what it means. But quite often when you hear the word confrontation in our context, there's always a negative connotation. But the word confront means to turn and face. So we turn and face our pain. And the other word I've used is embrace. So we embrace someone or something. Well, it's usually someone that we love. So embrace means to hold tightly. That's really important, to hold someone tightly with both arms to express love, either when you're greeting them or when they're leaving. Delroy, are you serious? Are you telling me that this stuff that I'm going through, this pain, to transform it, I have to either turn around and face it or turn around and hold it tightly? Are you serious? Yes, I'm serious. The other option is to deny it, to move on to the next thing, but the pain is buried, but it has life, it has energy. You would have heard me said quite a few times the quote by Freud that unexpressed emotions never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways through illness and all that type of thing. So what I want to suggest to you, if you're experiencing emotional inner pain caused by moral injury, and maybe you're listening because you're not experiencing moral pain, but you've been bullied at work, you're in a toxic environment, you're not being treated properly, or it could be that you're in a relationship in a pain, you turn and face the pain. And I want to encourage you to consider that your pain as a door knocker or a doorbell. And we have door knockers and doorbells to get the attention of somebody who might be inside. So what I'd like to suggest is the inner pain you feel from moral injury is knocking on your door to get your attention. It wants to be invited in as a guest. It wants to be entertained. There needs to be a conversation between you and it. And as Richard Rohr rightly said, don't be quick to get rid of it until you've learned, until you found out what it's got to teach you. Delroy, that's a big ask. I know it is, but it's really important. This whole thing about dealing with our pain, absolutely important. I've spoken about the 4 stages of personal development: discovery, development, mastery, and self and actualization. That is the realization of potential. And as I said before, we usually start position 2, and then that's where we stop quite often. So self-discovery, pain, understanding ourselves, our character, our needs, our values, our purpose in life, all takes time and can't be rushed. And in a society where it's a frenetic pace of life, we can be missing out on some really rich lessons because we're quick to move on to the next thing. Once you begin to understand who you are, then we can develop the appropriate skills for self-development and so forth. And Grover continues, but he calls it the cost of disowning your pain. So he really talks about facing the pain, and I'm talking about embracing the pain. I'm talking about that your pain is a door knock or a doorbell. It's ringing, it's loud and clear to get your attention. I suspect before you had this incident of moral injury, the doorbell was ringing quietly and the door knocker was ringing, was being knocked, but we ignored it. We continued because life was comfortable and things were all right. And yeah, we're kind of comfortable, and yeah, we just kind of let things, we just kind of go with the flow. He said the cost of disowning our pain, meaning when we deny it, we feel the pain. Holding the pain too long in our bodies can lead to a whole gamut of poor outcomes. Many of us know and have felt the consequence of holding such pain. He adds a further dimension, and listen to this. When stored too long, our pain may ambush us, triggering us to make regretful decisions, nudging us down the path of self-destruction. Our inner pain can ambush us. And so when we ambush is the act or stance of lying concealed as to attack by surprise. That is something that can happen if we do not transform our pain. So we need to face our pain, embrace it, and so forth. Really, really helpful. And one of the ways, so face it. So then what do we do with it? Be creative with how we deal with the pain. Tablets are one thing, but it's interesting. A friend of mine, not in the UK, had a really bad episode. It wasn't moral injury, and didn't deal with the pain for 6 years. And then she messaged me one day to say that a psychologist has said there's nothing they could do for her. So she ended up being in a therapeutic community for nearly 2 years, I think. She was there during the week, and then at weekend she went home. And she spoke about the amount of things that they did to access the pain: drama therapy, making things, painting, journaling, writing poetry, music. All those things were really, really helpful in helping her to kind of reconnect with herself. It was a long old journey, but she made it. A quote I'd like to just share with us by Gabor Mate, brilliant physician. He says this about, in conjunction with Sean Grover: when you shut down your emotions, you're also affecting your immune system, your nervous system. So the repression of emotions, which is a survival strategy, thus becomes a source of physiological illness later on. So when you shut down your emotions, you're affecting your immune system and your nervous system. So the repression of emotions, which is a survival strategy, thus becomes a source of physiological illness later on. Basically, if we close down our emotions, there is no getaway. In fact, we're a prisoner, and at some point it's going to pop up in one form of illness in one way or another. And the problem is, of course, that when it happens, we don't make the connection between the emotions that we've stored up so long within our being. So in terms of creativity, for centuries, people have used artists, poets, sculptors have used their skills to deal with some of the things that they're going through. So a lot of us will know that some of the songs that pop artists have sung has come out of their own pain. There's an excellent album, single by Robbie Williams called Feel. And there's a great line in it when he says, it's coming out, he's in a state of depression, and he writes this song called Feel. And then he says in this song, I sit and talk to God and he laughs at my plans. Just an indication of where he is. That line has really spoken to me. I sit and talk to God and he laughs at my plans. And he talks about if there's a language that you can understand. So he's planning, he's kind of having this conversation with God, and then he's saying that God is laughing at him, hence he's kind of experienced what he's going through. So I just wanted to finish off with my own experience. I'm somebody historically hurt very easily, and there was a particular situation I was in about 10 years ago, and the situation had to end. And I remember when I'm hurt, certainly years ago, it would take me months to get over. Really, when I say months, I don't mean 2 or 3 months, heading up to a year. And some of us may know what I'm talking about. That it just didn't seem to go away. But I had to deal with this, and I made a promise with myself. I started to journal, and I said, any negative emotion that pops up as I'm writing, I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm going to make a list. And once I've finished a bit and write, I'm going to come back to it. And I looked at my journal some time back. It took me 4 months from the first journal entry to the last one. When I first started, the journal entries were pretty much daily. But as I began to heal and get better, the space between each entry just got longer and longer. I think the last one was maybe about 3 weeks or so. In terms of transforming pain, the problem is if you use medication. Now that can be helpful in the short term, but the long term, no. But what you do, if you begin the process as transforming the pain, it doesn't come back to haunt you. You deal with it at a physiological level, you deal with it at a psychological level, you deal with it at an emotional level, you deal with it at a psychosocial in terms of relationships, so that as you transform your pain, you're not going to transmit it or project it onto people who are close to you who will be hurt by your projection. So be creative. I recall, this wasn't about moral injury, but I recall doing some work during lockdown, and a young woman said to me that she'd started to write poetry in a way to deal with the death of her father. It could be that you begin to write, and if you have dyslexia, maybe it's something you could draw, or not, it's something maybe you could speak into your phone, and then you let whatever you've recorded sit for a bit, and then 2 or 3 days time you go back to it, listen to it again, and then what's your further reflection on what you've heard 2 or 3 days previously. So it's about being creative in the work that you do. Also, if anybody's listening, and I know some counselors listen, and they maybe work with young people, or they're having real difficulty accessing how they feel, one of the ways that's really helped me, it was a Turkish student that helped me years ago. And I think she was coming out, she came from either Egypt or Turkey to look at the university, and she sat in one of the sessions, and when I'd finished, she said to me, you know, one of the ways of really engaging with young people, if they can't put words into emotion, can't put emotion into words, ask them what they're listening to in terms of their music, and ask them to bring it in and listen to it together and have a conversation, and that gives you an inroad into what they may be thinking and feeling about a current situation. So, concluding thoughts. The road to recovery is often a painful road, but it's an important road of self-discovery. Self-discovery is the process of gaining insight into one's own character, values, beliefs, passions, and purpose. It involves exploring and understand who we are at our core. No shortcut, no one session. It's a process. Who am I? Why has this happened? What am I to learn from this? All this takes time, and it's really important time. So begin your process of discovery. How? Embrace the pain, turn to it, face it, not in a negative way, but face it, embrace it, get to know it. It's saying something to you. Stay long enough to listen to it, pen and paper, recording your phone, or see a therapist or a counselor. Somebody like Beck Thompson, I want to give a massive shout out to the brilliant article that she wrote of her process. It wasn't one thing. It was counseling, therapy, journaling, and a whole raft of things that she did because she wanted to be healed. She wanted to have a sense of agency and control over what she was doing. So be creative in how you go about embracing your pain. Explore new ways of self-discovery, teach as a journey, and also consider being a part of an online community. Just want to say things about that. I've had a couple of people interested. Certainly I could do with more people, up to 10 people. Online community, there's great advantage in terms of being with people who get you. You're not having to say it in a way for them to understand you. People who've experienced moral injury, you need to be around people who have an understanding of what's taking place, and then together you work through this together. The community would only last for about 10 weeks, but I can put something out there which is that you can see, and then you can make a decision whether you want to be part of it or not. There's a sense of belonging that's really important when people experience moral injury. I said it, I think it was last week, almost as though they've been catapulted into a foreign land. It's like it's an alien land. They don't know this landscape, and they're really disrupted. And it's good being roundabout people who know what you're going through and can understand. It's convenient to meet with people. Also, people from different parts of the world, different perspective, from their cultural background, from context, can give us a different insight into what needs to take place. But also, the whole thing about being part of a community is if it's a growing community, it helps you to get to where you need to get to. So it's about improvement, it's about self-discovery, it's about learning who you are, so that when you emerge out of the time of moral injury, it doesn't go away, it'll never vanish, but you're a different individual, you're a stronger individual, you're kinder, you're maybe more calm, and you appreciate things more. It doesn't say you're a pushover. I think I read, so I can't remember who said it now. The minute she sees one red flag in where work is concerned, she's off. And you don't need to stay around for 2 red flags. You see the red flag, it's a sign for you to get yourself off, get yourself out of there. So if you're interested in being a part of an online community, DM me either on LinkedIn or on YouTube, or my, let me just put this out here so you can see it. My email address, delroy@delwest.com. And once the numbers are there, I shall keep you informed and to kind of let you know then what we're hoping to do doing the sessions together. So listen, I've taken 34 minutes of your time. Thank you for being with me today. Please, you can always DM me if it's not to do with the online community, maybe something you want further explanation of. Please let me know. Thank you for those who've commented this evening. That's been really helpful. Let's go back here. Yeah. Thank you, James, and also for Sonia and anybody else who's been watching. Thank you for those who watch silently. I hope you've got something from it. If you have, pay it forward. If you can use it in your place of work, great. If you can use it for yourself to begin the process of transforming your inner pain, I'm sure I'm going to do more next week on it because you can't do it in one session. Please begin the process. Face your pain. Turn around and face. Don't run away from it. Turn around and face it. Embrace it with both arms and learn from it over a period of time. Wish you well. Enjoy the rest of your evening and your week. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Speak to you soon. Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.